We take it up. Let's lose control. We turn it up. And let the good times roll.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Outside the Ropes, the first edition here in 2023. I'm Tom Hannifan, and I'm joined by Speedball Mike Bailey. You may know him as the 2022 Impact X Division Star of the Year and also one half of the 2022 Impact Match of the Year, the near 60-minute classic with Josh Alexander for the Impact World Championship. But especially today on Outside the Ropes, what I want to start with is what we saw this past Thursday night on Access TV. The pit fight that you asked for with Kenny King. How are you feeling? You came away with the victory, but how are you feeling physically?
Not good.
In short.
But that's the short answer, is not good, but then again, that's part of being a professional wrestler is not having an off season and never feeling quite 100%, but you said I asked for it, which I did ask for the pit fight in very specific terms, but Kenny King had been begging for it for months, maybe, so I'm glad that is hopefully resolved.
What made you want the pit fight specifically? No ropes, you only win by knockout or submission.
So, quite obviously, I beat Kenny twice in professional wrestling matches, within the rules of professional wrestling. I won within the rules of professional wrestling, rules that he tried his best to break and avoid as much as possible. So in order to make things clear once and for all, pit fight, no rules, just fighting. There's no wiggle room for him. He can't surprise me with anything. It's just straightforward fighting. And I didn't think he wanted to have another pro wrestling match, so why not play by his rules?
Fair enough. In regards to your background, it's not just professional wrestling, but it's combat sports as a whole. When did you first start training or first start having interest in combat sports?
So it started with pro wrestling. It all started with professional wrestling. That's actually what got me into martial arts a couple years later. I started watching wrestling when I was like 7. I started doing Taekwondo when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And it was simply, I had a friend who did martial arts and he was like, hey, come try out. And I was like, oh, sure. And honestly, one of the main reasons I did it and stuck with it is because the school was near my house. And I, of course, fell in love with martial arts from then on. But it wasn't even a thing that I was like, oh, I love martial arts, so I want to do martial arts. I was like, I love pro wrestling. Oh, martial arts? Oh, that's going to help me with pro wrestling someday. And it worked out.
It certainly set you apart, and that you're just different than everybody else on the Impact Wrestling roster. You've got this diverse arsenal that you can bring to the ring. So I have to ask, what match made you fall in love with pro wrestling?
So it wasn't even a match, which is strange because very, very openly, I always preferred the athletic side of professional wrestling and the action rather than the stories and the big characters. But flipping through the channels and seeing Kane try to set the Brood on fire, that caught my eye, and then fell in love with the actual action side of it. And when I was a child watching, all that on mainstream TV, I fell out of love with it a little bit until I saw things like the X Division, and I saw AJ Styles and Low-Ki and Amazing Red doing the kind of in-ring action that I was really in love with. That's when I really started thinking, oh wow, this is what I want to do, and this is the kind of wrestling I want to do. Because of course, when only super heavyweights are featured on the program, that's hard for me to relate to, even outside of the X Division, and before seeing stuff outside of what is mainly featured on TV, I was always more interested in the smaller, more athletic wrestlers.
Sure, of course, that makes a lot of sense. Now, this is as you're young, you're beginning your path in pro wrestling, you're beginning your path as well in mixed martial arts. What was that like at the high school level? Obviously, you're trying to balance your studies with your pursuits from an athletic standpoint.
I was always way more focused on all the other stuff than school. I was good at school, luckily, but I did not enjoy it. I never did. I was always way more focused on training than actually studying, which luckily for me ended up working out. But I remember it was difficult in school, especially when tournaments would happen and I would be waking up at 6 a.m. to go do morning training and then train for 3-4 hours after school. I was completely exhausted and had no energy for studying. But that had been a recurring theme throughout my life until pro wrestling actually became my job, where I was trying to balance everything else with training literally as much as I possibly could.
And it took you a while to get to that point where pro wrestling could be your full-time job, because you and I have spoken before that after high school, you were working as a custodian.
That's right.
You're trying to balance out life.
Right. So when I finished high school, and then there was a question of what do you want to do, I went to cooking school for the main reason that it was a 1-year program. And then I would be like, okay, I can do that and then work and then use the money from work to, but then I got offered as a job as a custodial and cleaning a university at night, which was especially handy because it was from, I started Sunday night and I finished on Thursday morning. So I was able to wrestle and take bookings Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as well as, I'd get home around like 7 a.m., then I'd sleep until like 2 p.m., and then I'd go to, do my own training, and then I'd be able to attend class at night for boxing or taekwondo or whatever, or, wrestling training whenever that was accessible, and then go to work, and then I had enough time to train as much as I wanted, which was honestly absolutely exhausting.
It sounds it. I'm exhausted listening to it. Oh my God.
Which led up to, right up until the point where wrestling provided enough income for me to survive. I was taking pro wrestling bookings 2 or 3 a week. I was training for boxing fights, doing taekwondo tournaments. I was in university as well, taking night classes and working the night shift full time. Which is, one of those points where something has to give.
Right.
And I was lucky enough that it was the thing that I loved most in professional wrestling.
Your dedication paid off. I'm legitimately blown away at what you put yourself through. And so you eventually get to the point where pro wrestling's paying the bills. You no longer have to work a second job or anything like that. At what point did the Speedball nickname get bestowed upon you?
That was like a couple years into my career. Yeah, very, very early on. My first match with the IWS, which is probably the biggest promotion in the province of Quebec right now. But so this is where my older brother trained. He trained with the IWS. And someone who became known as El Generico was his original trainer. And that was when he was 16 and I was 14. And he started training with pro wrestling there as they were the #1 promotion. And so for the first 4 years or so, it had been my goal to get there. Eventually did and earned the nickname Speedball.
At what point do you think you found your voice or your pacing in the ring to kind of oh no, I am Speedball?
I think relatively early on, I figured out what I was good at. But to contextualize, I started wrestling in Quebec in 2006, right? Where the scene as a whole was not good. For the main reason that there was a lot of barriers, there was no distribution on television. But I was very fortunate in that, my brother and I wrestled each other a lot. And I had him, I had a couple other like-minded friends who all together understood the kind of wrestling that we enjoyed and liked to do, right? So instead of having old school pro wrestling heads trying to get us to do what they do, we were all kind of coaching each other into doing what we liked. And clearly what I was good at was bringing in the martial arts and the, stunts and acrobatics to professional wrestling. And because I was surrounded by such a good group, I was able to figure that out relatively early.
It's really amazing the speed, I mentioned it before, the diversity that you have in the ring. And it's fascinating because we just got done with Hard to Kill about a week ago. And rewind a year ago, you and I are both debuting on Hard to Kill. You're on the countdown to Hard to Kill. I'll never forget that in Dallas. And that was emotional for you. You'd been prevented from working in the United States for about 5 years, finally getting that opportunity in Impact Wrestling with the same X division that you had talked about earlier, like of AJ Styles and the Amazing Red. What did that first Hard to Kill mean to you?
Given everyone that was in the match, I was like, this is a fitting return. I was very excited for, the main thing that I was excited about was really getting to show the evolution, because I still, of course, had people for all those 7 years going, oh my God, I loved your match from 2015 that was so good, and it bothered me so much because within those 7 years, I didn't stop wrestling, I didn't slow down for a second, and I had so many much better matches than what I had been able to show in the US. And I was like, this is great. So this is the thing that comes up a lot, but I was extremely excited to be on the pre-show and that my match was going to be on YouTube and that everyone was going to be able to see it. And especially with the people with whom I was sharing the ring, I was super excited to show them this is Speedball Mike Bailey, the 2022 version.
It's an incredible platform, period. And you hit the nail on the head with just getting in front of more eyeballs. Then 2022 unravels and you win the X Division Championship. You nearly broke the record for the most successful X Division title defenses in one reign, still held by the great Christopher Daniels, but you went 9. And it seemed like every single week you were defending the championship. And I know my broadcast colleague, Matthew Raywalt, and I were like, how in the world can he keep this going? What was your mindset as you're rolling through that X Division Championship reign?
Man, so more than anything, I was grateful that I had such a busy schedule and such a great variety of opponents because Impact is my home. It's where I am and it's where I'm going to be for the foreseeable future. And I want to master the X Division style and getting so many different great X Division opponents. Of course, the whole time I held the title, I was looking forward to having the greatest reign of all time in terms of number of days, in terms of defenses and everything else. But my goal was to become the greatest X Division wrestler of all time, and I felt like I was getting the chance to learn how to do that.
Is your goal the most X Division title reigns of all time?
See, that's a rough one because there's other titles that I want as well.
Obviously, you went after the Impact World Championship and wrestled for nearly 60 minutes. We had to extend the broadcast on Access TV the night that you challenged Josh Alexander.
So, apologies to Delirious and Eddie Edwards, by the way, who got cut out.
But seriously, like you win 22 X Division Star of the Year, and then just as 2022 is winding down, you fall into this situation where Bully Ray is not in the building, not at the Impact Zone to take the open challenge from Josh Alexander for the Impact World title. Now, you've been on the record weeks prior saying just because I lost the X Division title doesn't mean I'm not looking at other goals, trying to become a champion all over again. When you came out there that night, did you have any idea that it's like, oh, this might go a long time?
Yes. But no, yes, I was prepared.
Insane. It was nearly 60 minutes.
The X Division is meant to highlight a certain kind of wrestler and a certain kind of action. Looking at Frankie Kazarian specifically, right, whom I lost the X Division Championship to, and then he cashed in Option C, and then went on to give Josh a hell of a fight.
That was great at Overdrive, yeah.
So to me, that just showed how thin that line is between the skill level in the X Division and the rest of Impact, right? So given, I could have beat Frankie Kazarian at Bound for Glory. I think Frankie Kazarian could have beat Josh Alexander. Josh just happened to win. And so so you know, I've wrestled Josh before and I know where our skills reside, but that really let me know we're pretty close. I could push this guy past what he's used to doing, and I mean, I can't say that I had any expectations going into this match. It could have gone 3 minutes. I could have caught him in 30 seconds. One kick gone down, I'm the new champion, and unceremoniously, you know, I would have been on top, and that's how it could have happened. It just didn't. It went completely the other way, and we ended up fighting for an hour, which, like, you can't really prepare for, you can't expect. You can be ready for it, though.
Physically, what you two put each other through was unreal. And you know, we talked about it on the broadcast, and it's been well documented. You signed your Impact contract on the back of Josh Alexander. He literally bent over so you could sign it on his
You have
back.
to say the word literally.
Yeah,
because
literally was like,
yeah.
oh, go ahead and sign it. But
So fighting to get to.
I think that's beautiful. And again, you win Match of the Year with Josh in 2022 with that near 60-minute classic. So now going into 2023, you've got Hard to Kill behind you. You've got this pit fight with Kenny King behind you. And you'll recover from that physically and mentally, I'm sure, very soon. But what's the next thing on the list for Speedball Mike Bailey?
I set the bar really high in 2022. I accomplished a lot of what I wanted to accomplish, especially in returning to the US. And I feel like I have a big challenge in front of me in topping that, in outdoing what I did the previous year in 2023, and that's my goal. I didn't approach last year with anything specific in mind, and things ended up working quite well. But I mean, getting 9 defenses on an X Division title reign, having to outdo that somehow is what I'm gonna have to figure out.